When Tasha Reynolds, a dedicated neonatal nurse from a working-class background, falls in love with Evan Lancaster, heir to a technology empire, their worlds collide in ways neither expected. Their unexpected pregnancy becomes the catalyst that forces them to confront generations of family secrets, racial prejudice, and the true cost of choosing love over legacy. As Sterling Lancaster wages war against their relationship, Tasha must find the courage to stand up to one of Boston's most powerful men while protecting the family she's building. This is a story about breaking free from the past, fighting for what matters most, and discovering that sometimes the greatest strength comes from refusing to back down. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. Tasha Reynolds straightened her neonatal nurse's uniform and took a deep breath before entering Boston Memorial Hospital. At 29, she'd already overcome more obstacles than most people face in a lifetime. Raised by her grandmother in a working-class neighborhood after her parents died in a car accident, Tasha had fought hard for everything she had. "Morning, Tasha," called Dr. Wilson from the nurse's station. "We've got 3 newborns coming in from delivery today." Tasha smiled. "I'll check on the incubators right away." Working with babies was her passion. Their innocence and complete dependence on her care gave her life meaning. But lately, her thoughts had been drifting to another person who was becoming equally important in her life, Evan Lancaster. Just thinking his name made her heart beat faster. They'd met almost exactly a year ago, right here in this hospital. Evan had been visiting a friend's wife who'd just had twins, and he'd looked completely lost in the maternity ward. "Can I help you?" Tasha had asked, noticing his confused expression as he studied the hospital directory. When he looked up, their eyes locked. Evan wasn't what most people expected. Despite being heir to the Lancaster fortune and technology empire, he wasn't flashy or arrogant. Instead, he was soft-spoken, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. "I'm trying to find room 302, he'd said. "My friend's wife just had twins." "I'll take you there," Tasha had offered, trying to ignore the strange flutter in her stomach. That brief encounter had led to coffee in the hospital cafeteria, which turned into dinner the following week, and before long they were seeing each other regularly. Now, as Tasha checked the vital signs of a premature baby girl, her mind wandered to the home pregnancy test she'd taken that morning. Positive. She was going to have Evan's baby. They hadn't planned this. They'd been careful, taking their relationship slowly, savoring each moment. But somehow, fate had other plans. How would Evan react? They'd never really discussed children or marriage. Would he be happy? Scared? Would he stand by her? "Nurse Reynolds," called Dr. Wilson, interrupting her thoughts. "The Lewis baby needs his medication." Tasha pushed her personal concerns aside and focused on her work. That was one thing her grandmother had taught her. No matter what was happening in your personal life, you showed up and did your job with excellence. That evening, Tasha sat in her modest apartment, waiting for Evan. She'd texted him earlier, asking if he could come over after work. They needed to talk. The knock on her door came precisely at 7. Evan was always punctual. "Hey," he said, greeting her with a gentle kiss. "Everything okay?" Your text sounded serious. Tasha took his hand and led him to the couch. Evan Lancaster didn't look like a billionaire's son in his simple blue sweater and jeans. His light brown hair was slightly tousled, and his warm eyes searched her face with concern. "Evan, I need to tell you something," Tasha began, her heart pounding. "I'm pregnant." The room fell silent. Evan's expression froze, his eyes widening as he processed her words. Then, to Tasha's surprise, tears welled in his eyes. "A baby? We're having a baby?" His voice broke with emotion. Before she could respond, he pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Are you happy about this?" Tasha asked, barely above a whisper. Evan pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. "Happy doesn't begin to describe it. Tasha, I love you. I've known for months that I want to spend my life with you." Relief flooded through her. "I was so worried about how you'd react. I know we haven't talked about this, but a family with you, it's everything I want." His eyes shone with genuine joy. For the rest of the evening, they talked about the future, doctor's appointments, where they might live, even possible names. Evan never once mentioned his father, or how Sterling Lancaster might react to the news, and Tasha didn't ask. Tonight was about them and their baby. The Lancaster estate sat on 10 acres of prime real estate just outside Boston. The colonial mansion, with its pillared entrance and manicured gardens, screamed old money and privilege. Evan parked his car in the circular driveway and sat for a moment, gathering his courage. He hadn't told Tasha he was coming here today. She didn't need the stress of his father's reaction while she was carrying their child. Sterling Lancaster was in his study, as usual. At 62, he still maintained the commanding presence that had helped him build Lancaster Tech into a global powerhouse. His silver hair was impeccably styled, and his custom suit fit his tall frame perfectly. "Evan," he said without looking up from his computer, "I wasn't expecting you today." "I need to talk to you, Dad," Evan said, closing the study door behind him. Something in his son's voice made Sterling look up. "What is it? Problems at the office?" Evan took a deep breath. "No, it's personal. I wanted to tell you that Tasha is pregnant. We're having a baby." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Sterling's face hardened, his eyes turning to ice. "Tasha, the nurse." It wasn't a question. "Yes, we've been together for over a year now." Sterling stood slowly, his hands resting on his desk. "And you thought bringing a child into this situation was a good idea?" Evan straightened his shoulders. "We didn't plan it, but we're both happy about the baby." Sterling walked to the window, looking out at the estate his family had owned for generations. When he turned back, his expression was calculated and cold. "You are not having kids with that black woman." The words hit Evan like a physical blow. "Dad, listen to me very carefully," Sterling continued, his voice dangerously quiet. "The Lancaster name means something in this town, in this country. We have a legacy to protect. I don't care about the Lancaster name if it means—" "Don't interrupt me." Sterling's fist came down hard on his desk. "You think this is about race? This is about class, about appropriate matches, about what's best for the company. Tasha is brilliant and kind and—" "She's a nurse from the wrong side of town," Sterling cut in. "Do you really think she'll fit into our world? That her child will?" Evan felt sick. "Our child, Dad, your grandchild." Sterling's laugh was without humor. "Is that what you think? That I'll welcome this complication into my home, into my legacy?" He moved closer to Evan, lowering his voice. "Let me make this very clear. If you continue with this relationship, if you have this child, you can forget about your place at Lancaster Tech. Your trust fund, your inheritance, this home, all of it will be gone." "You can't do that," Evan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Can't I? Who do you think controls everything? Who built the empire you so casually take for granted?" Sterling's smile was cruel. "Think about it, son. Is she really worth losing everything?" Over the next few weeks, Tasha noticed the change in Evan. He was still attentive, still talked about the baby with excitement, but something was different. A shadow had fallen over him. "Is everything okay?" she asked one night as they sat on her couch, watching a movie neither of them was really paying attention to. "Just work stress," Evan answered, not meeting her eyes. Tasha didn't believe him, but she didn't push. She'd learned early in life that when people wanted to share their troubles, they would. Pushing only made them retreat further. But as days turned into weeks, the distance between them grew. Evan started cancelling plans, citing meetings that ran late. When they were together, he seemed distracted, checking his phone constantly. Tasha's first ultrasound was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Evan had promised to be there, but at the last minute, he texted to say he couldn't make it. "Mr. Lancaster's meeting ran over," his message read. "I'm so sorry, I'll make it up to you." Tasha went alone, fighting back tears as the technician showed her the tiny heartbeat flickering on the screen. "Would you like a picture for Daddy?" the technician asked kindly. Tasha nodded, wondering if Evan would even want it. That night she lay awake, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. She wasn't showing yet, but she knew her body was changing, growing their child. What had happened to them? Everything had been perfect until she told Evan about the baby. He'd seemed so happy at first, but now a terrible thought occurred to her. What if Evan had only pretended to be happy about the baby? What if, deep down, he didn't want this child, didn't want her? No, she couldn't believe that. The joy in his eyes had been real. Something else was wrong, something he wasn't telling her. Her phone buzzed with a text. "I miss you," Evan had written. "Can I come over tomorrow?" Tasha texted back a simple, "Yes," then put her phone aside. Tomorrow, she would get answers. This silence between them had gone on long enough. Maria Gonzalez had worked for the Lancaster family for over 20 years. As Sterling's housekeeper, she knew more about the family's secrets than anyone. She'd watched Evan grow from a sensitive boy into a kind but often conflicted man, constantly trying to please his demanding father. When she overheard Sterling's threat about the baby, her heart broke for Evan. She remembered all too well what had happened to Evan's mother, Sophia. The official story was that she had died from an illness when Evan was 4. But Maria knew the truth. Sophia had left after years of Sterling's emotional abuse and controlling behavior. Sterling had used his power and money to erase her from their lives, telling everyone, including Evan, that she had died. Today, Maria was cleaning Sterling's study when she overheard him on the phone. "Everything is under control," Sterling was saying. "Evan knows what's at stake. He'll make the right decision." After a pause, he continued, "The girl is nothing to worry about. She'll be out of the picture soon enough. I've dealt with unwanted attachments before." Maria's hand trembled as she dusted the bookshelves. She knew what she had to do. The next day, Tasha was preparing dinner for Evan's visit when her doorbell rang. Expecting Evan, she was surprised to find an older Latina woman standing there instead. "Tasha Reynolds?" the woman asked, looking nervously over her shoulder. "Yes, that's me. My name is Maria Gonzalez. I work for the Lancaster family." She clutched her purse tightly. "May I come in? There's something you need to know." Tasha hesitated, then stepped aside to let the woman enter. "I shouldn't be here," Maria said once they were inside. "If Mr. Lancaster knew I was talking to you, I'd lose my job. But I can't stay silent anymore." "What is this about?" Tasha asked, a knot forming in her stomach. "It's about Evan, about why he's been pulling away from you." Maria took a deep breath. "I overheard Mr. Lancaster threatening him. He told Evan that if he had a child with you, he would cut him off completely. No inheritance, no job, nothing." Tasha felt like the floor was tilting beneath her. "Because I'm black." Maria nodded sadly. Mr. Lancaster's exact words were, "You are not having kids with that black woman." Tasha sank onto her couch, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. "There's more," Maria continued. "Yesterday I heard him on the phone saying that you'll be out of the picture soon enough. He said he's dealt with unwanted attachments before. Evan knows about this, about what his father said." Tasha's voice was barely audible. "Yes, he argued with his father, but..." Maria shrugged helplessly. "Mr. Lancaster has controlled Evan his whole life, made him doubt himself, and now he's threatening to take everything away." After Maria left, Tasha sat alone in her apartment, rage and hurt battling inside her. So this was why Evan had been pulling away. Not because he didn't want their baby, but because his father had threatened him, and Evan hadn't told her, hadn't trusted her enough to share this burden. Her doorbell rang again, and this time it was Evan, smiling nervously, holding a bouquet of flowers. "Tasha, I've missed you," he began, but stopped when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" Tasha looked at the man she loved, the father of her child, and made a decision. This wouldn't be like her other relationships, where she accepted less than she deserved. This time she would fight. "I know what your father said," she told him, her voice steady despite the pain in her heart. "I know everything." Evan's face crumpled. "Tasha, I can explain." "No," she interrupted. "No more explanations. No more secrets." She picked up her car keys. "Take me to your father's house now." "What? Why would you want to go there?" Tasha's eyes flashed with determination. "Because it's time he met the mother of his grandchild. It's time he looked me in the eye and said what he really thinks." "Tasha, please, this isn't a good idea. Your father is a man who thinks he can control our lives, our future, our child." Tasha's voice was firm. "But he's about to learn that he can't. Are you with me on this, Evan? Or are you with him?" Evan looked at her, conflict clear in his eyes. Then slowly he nodded. "I'm with you. Always." As they drove toward the Lancaster estate, Tasha's mind raced. She didn't know exactly what she would say to Sterling Lancaster, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't backing down. Not from this man, not from anyone who threatened her family, because that's what they were now. A family. Her, Evan, and their unborn child. And families protected each other, fought for each other. The Lancaster mansion came into view, its imposing structure rising against the darkening sky. Tasha felt a momentary flutter of fear, but pushed it aside. Her grandmother hadn't raised her to cower before men like Sterling Lancaster. "Are you sure about this?" Evan asked as they parked. Tasha looked at him, seeing the worry in his eyes, but also something else. Pride in her strength. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," she answered, opening her car door. "It's time to face your father." They walked to the front door, Tasha's head held high, her heart beating steady and strong. Whatever happened next would change their lives forever. The Lancaster mansion was even more intimidating up close. Tasha stood at the massive front door, Evan beside her, his face pale but determined. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. Tasha squeezed his hand. "Yes, I do. For us, for our baby." Before Evan could ring the bell, the door swung open. Maria, the housekeeper, stood there, her eyes widening when she saw Tasha. "Mr. Evan, Miss Reynolds," she whispered urgently. "Mr. Lancaster is having dinner with the board members. Everyone is in the dining room." "Thank you, Maria," Evan said, giving her a meaningful look. He knew she must have been the one to tell Tasha the truth. Maria stepped aside, worry etched on her face. "Please be careful," she murmured as they passed. The sound of male laughter and clinking glasses grew louder as they approached the dining room. Tasha hesitated for just a moment, then squared her shoulders and walked forward. The long mahogany table was filled with men in expensive suits. At the head sat Sterling Lancaster, a crystal glass of scotch in his hand, looking every inch the powerful billionaire. His silver hair caught the light from the chandelier above, and his face was animated as he finished telling a story that had the whole table laughing. The laughter died instantly when Tasha walked in, Evan at her side. Sterling's smile vanished, replaced by cold fury. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, placing his glass down with deliberate control. The other men shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. "I apologize for the interruption, gentlemen," Evan said, his voice stronger than Tasha had expected. "But something important has come up. Could you give us the room, please?" The board members glanced at Sterling, who gave a tight nod. They filed out quickly, eyes averted, murmuring awkward goodbyes. When the last man closed the door behind him, Sterling stood slowly, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. "How dare you bring her here?" he said to Evan, not even looking at Tasha. "During a business dinner, no less." "Her name is Tasha," Evan replied, "and she's carrying your grandchild." Sterling's cold gaze finally shifted to Tasha. "So, Miss Reynolds, you've decided to force your way into my home." Tasha met his stare without flinching. "I'm here because I deserve to hear it from you directly. No more secrets, no more threats behind my back." "I don't know what you're talking about," Sterling said smoothly. "Don't lie to her, Dad," Evan cut in. "Maria told her everything, about how you threatened to cut me off if I stayed with Tasha, about how you said I shouldn't have a child with her." Sterling's eyes flashed to the door. "That woman is fired." "No, she's not," Evan said firmly. "Not if you want me to continue working at Lancaster Tech." A tense silence filled the room. Tasha took a step forward, placing herself directly across the table from Sterling. "I came here to tell you something, Mr. Lancaster," she said, her voice steady and clear. "This baby will never carry your name, because it will carry mine." Sterling's face flushed with anger. "You think you can come into my house and threaten me? Do you have any idea who I am? What I can do?" "I know exactly who you are," Tasha replied. A man so afraid of what others might think that he'd reject his own grandchild. "Afraid?" Sterling laughed bitterly. "I built an empire from nothing. I don't fear anything or anyone." "Then why are you so desperate to keep me away from your son, from your family?" Tasha challenged. Sterling's eyes narrowed. "The Lancaster name means something in this world. It opens doors, creates opportunities. I won't have it diluted or complicated by—" "By what?" Tasha demanded. "Say it. By a black woman? By a child who won't look like you?" Sterling's jaw tightened. "By someone who doesn't understand our world, our responsibilities. Someone who will never fit in." Evan stepped forward, placing his hand on Tasha's shoulder. "You're wrong, Dad. Tasha understands more about responsibility and integrity than you ever have." "Don't be naive, Evan," Sterling snapped. "You think this is about love? It's about your future, about the company, about everything I've built for you." "No," Evan shook his head. "It's about control. It always has been." Sterling's expression hardened. "You have a choice to make, son. Right here, right now. Her or your birthright." The room fell silent. Tasha felt her heart pounding, but kept her face calm. She wouldn't beg, wouldn't plead. This was Evan's decision to make. Evan looked at his father, then at Tasha. His eyes filled with a new clarity. "There's no choice to make, Dad. I choose my child. I choose Tasha." Sterling's face contorted with rage. "Then get out of my house, both of you, and don't expect a penny from me or a place at my company." "Fine," Evan said, his voice steady. "I'll clear out my office tomorrow." He took Tasha's hand and turned to leave. As they reached the door, Sterling called after them. "You'll regret this, Evan. When the novelty wears off, when you realize what you've thrown away, don't come crawling back." Evan paused, looking back at his father. "The only thing I regret is not standing up to you sooner." Outside, the night air felt clean and fresh after the stifling atmosphere of the mansion. Tasha took a deep breath, suddenly feeling the weight of what had just happened. "Are you okay?" she asked Evan, who was staring at the house where he'd grown up. "No," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. But I will be. He turned to her, taking both her hands in his. Tasha, I'm so sorry. I should have told you what my father said. I should have stood up to him weeks ago. Tears filled Tasha's eyes. Why didn't you? Did you think I couldn't handle it? Evan shook his head. No, it wasn't that. I was scared, not of losing the money or the company, but of failing you, of not being strong enough to build a life without all this. He gestured at the mansion. My whole life has been defined by being a Lancaster. I didn't know who I'd be without it. And now? Now I know that being your partner, being a father to our child, that's who I want to be. He pulled her close, his tears falling freely now. I was raised by a man who taught me that power meant silence. But you taught me to speak. Tasha held him as he sobbed, his body shaking with years of pent-up emotion. She'd never seen him this vulnerable, this raw, and it made her love him even more. As they drove away from the Lancaster estate, Evan looked lighter somehow, as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Where to now? Tasha asked softly. Evan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Home. Your apartment, if that's okay. We can figure out the rest tomorrow. That night, as they lay together in Tasha's small bedroom, Evan's hand resting protectively on her stomach, Tasha felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in weeks. They had a difficult road ahead, but they would face it together. The next morning, Evan went to Lancaster Tech to clean out his office. He'd worked at the company since graduating from college, slowly working his way up, despite his father's constant criticism. The employees watched in shocked silence as he packed his personal items into a cardboard box. His assistant, Jenny, followed him anxiously. Mr. Lancaster, Evan, is this really happening? Are you really leaving? Evan nodded, looking around at the office he'd called his second home for years. It's time, Jenny. But don't worry, you'll be fine. It's not me I'm worried about, she said, lowering her voice. Your father has been in meetings with the board all morning. There are rumors flying everywhere. Let them talk, Evan said, placing the last of his belongings in the box. I'm done caring what people in this building think. As he was about to leave, Jenny handed him a small key. Before I forget, this came for you earlier. It's for your safe deposit box at First National. The messenger said it was urgent. Evan frowned, taking the key. I don't have a safe deposit box at First National. Jenny shrugged. That's what he said. Maybe it's a mistake. Evan pocketed the key. His curiosity piqued. He'd stopped by the bank on his way back to Tasha's. At the bank, the manager led Evan to a private room where the safe deposit box waited. This box has been maintained for almost 30 years, the manager explained. The annual fee is automatically paid from an account set up for that purpose. But I never opened this box, Evan said, confused. The manager checked his records. The box was opened by a Sophia Lancaster in 1995. You're listed as the only person authorized to access it upon your 30th birthday or in the event you asked for it specifically. Evan's heart skipped a beat. Sophia Lancaster, his mother's name, the mother he barely remembered, who had died when he was 4. With trembling hands, he inserted the key and opened the box. Inside was a sealed envelope with his name written on it in elegant handwriting and a small flash drive. The manager discreetly left the room, giving Evan privacy. He opened the envelope and began to read. My darling Evan, if you're reading this, then something has happened to break you free from your father's control. I always prayed this day would come. What you've been told about me is a lie. I did not die when you were 4. Your father forced me out of your life, threatening to use his money and power to take you from me completely, if I didn't go quietly. He made me choose between fighting a losing battle to stay in your life, or leaving so that someday, when you were old enough, we might have a chance to reconnect. It was the hardest choice I've ever made, but I hope that one day you would understand. On the drive you'll find photos, letters and documents, proof of everything I'm telling you. You'll also find the truth about why your father was so determined to erase me from your life. I am a woman of color, Evan. My mother was black, my father Lebanese. Your father fell in love with me in college when he was just Sterling, not yet the mighty Sterling Lancaster. But when his father threatened to disinherit him, he chose his legacy over our love. Years later, when we reconnected and I became pregnant with you, he convinced me that things would be different. They weren't. As you grew and began to look more like me, his fear of the truth coming out grew too. I've watched you from afar all these years, my beautiful son. I've seen the man you've become, and I am so proud. If you're reading this, it means you found the courage to stand up to your father. I'm enclosing my contact information. It may no longer be current by the time you read this, but I've left a trail for you to follow if you wish to find me. Whatever you decide, know that I have loved you every day of your life. Your mother, Sophia. Evan read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. His mother was alive. All these years, she'd been alive, watching from a distance, waiting for him to break free from his father. With shaking hands, he plugged the flash drive into his phone. It contained dozens of photos. His mother holding him as a baby, playing with him in a park, pictures of her family. In one photo, Evan could clearly see his own features reflected in his maternal grandmother's face. There were also documents, legal papers showing how Sterling had threatened to use his money and connections to get full custody if Sophia didn't disappear. Bank statements showing regular payments to keep her silent, even a signed agreement where she relinquished all parental rights in exchange for his allowing her to live without harassment. The final document was the most damning, a letter from Sterling to his own father, written before Evan was born, explaining how he'd made a mistake with a woman who wasn't suitable for the Lancaster name, but that he would handle it to protect the family legacy. Evan sat in the bank's private room for over an hour, absorbing the truth of his past, of his father's betrayal. Everything made sense now. His father's reaction to Tasha, his desperate need to control Evan's life, his obsession with the Lancaster name and legacy. When he finally left the bank, he had only one thought. He needed to tell Tasha. She needed to know that this fight was about more than them. It was about generations of silence, shame, and erasure. Tasha was at work when Evan called. "I need to see you," he said, his voice urgent. "I found something about my mother." "Your mother? Evan, what are you talking about?" "I can't explain over the phone. Can you take a break? Meet me at the coffee shop across from the hospital?" 20 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of the cafe, Evan's hands shaking as he pushed the letter across the table to Tasha. She read it slowly, her eyes widening. "Oh my God, Evan, your mother is alive." He nodded, still struggling to process it himself. "And she's a woman of color. My father's been lying to me my entire life." Tasha reached for his hand. "This explains so much about his reaction to us, to our baby. He's not just racist, Tasha. He's ashamed of his own past, of once loving someone like my mother, like you." Evan's voice broke. "He spent my whole life trying to mold me into someone who would never make the same mistake he did." "Which was what? Falling in love with a woman of color?" "No," Evan said, his eyes meeting hers. "His mistake was giving in to his father's threats, choosing money and status over love." Tasha sat back, taking it all in. "What are you going to do? Will you try to find her?" Evan nodded. "The contact information in the letter is old, but there are other leads on the flash drive. I want to find her, Tasha. I want our child to know their grandmother." "Of course," Tasha said, squeezing his hand. "We'll find her together." As they sat in the cafe making plans for their future, neither noticed the man watching them from across the street, taking photos with a long-lens camera. Sterling Lancaster was not a man accustomed to losing. When Evan failed to return his calls over the next few days, his anger grew. How dare his son defy him this way, after everything Sterling had done to secure his future, to protect the Lancaster legacy. "Mr. Lancaster," his secretary's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Bridges is here to see you." "Send him in," Sterling ordered. Rick Bridges was the kind of man who operated in shadows. As Lancaster Tech's head of security, he handled the problems that couldn't be solved through normal channels. "What did you find?" Sterling demanded as soon as the door closed. Bridges placed a folder on the desk. "They're staying at her apartment. He's been making calls to headhunters, setting up interviews with Lancaster Tech's competitors." Sterling's jaw tightened. "That ungrateful—" "There's more," Bridges interrupted, sliding a photo across the desk. It showed Evan and Tasha sitting in a cafe, looking at papers spread between them. He accessed a safe deposit box at First National yesterday, one registered to Sophia Lancaster. The color drained from Sterling's face. "That's impossible. Those records were sealed. That account was closed years ago." Bridges shook his head. "Apparently not. And based on their conversation afterward, which my guy partially overheard, Evan now knows the truth about his mother." Sterling stood abruptly, turning to look out the window at the Boston skyline. After a long moment, he spoke, his voice dangerously calm. "I want everything you can find on Tasha Reynolds, every detail, every weakness, every skeleton in her closet. I want to know who her friends are, who her enemies are, what her weaknesses are." "Sir, if I may," Bridges hesitated. "Maybe it's time to let this go. Your son seems serious about this woman." Sterling turned, his eyes cold. I didn't ask for your opinion. I built this company, this legacy, from nothing. I didn't sacrifice everything to have it destroyed by my son's poor judgment. What exactly are you planning to do? Bridges asked carefully. Sterling smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Whatever is necessary to protect the Lancaster name. Whatever is necessary to bring my son back where he belongs. That evening, Tasha returned home to find Evan surrounded by boxes, a determined look on his face. What's all this? She asked, setting down her purse. I've been thinking, he said, his eyes bright with excitement. Why wait? Why keep living separately when we're starting a family? I think we should move in together, find a new place, a fresh start for both of us. Tasha smiled, touched by his enthusiasm. I'd like that. But Evan, we don't have to rush. We've both been through a lot these past few days. He came to her, taking her hands in his. I know, but I'm done wasting time, Tasha. I've lived my whole life following my father's script, waiting for his approval. I don't want to wait anymore. I want to build our life on our terms. What about your job, your career? I've already had 3 interviews. Turns out there are plenty of companies interested in hiring someone with my experience, especially if it means getting access to Lancaster Tech's client list. He grinned. I'll be fine. We'll be fine. Tasha looked at this new Evan, confident, decisive, free from his father's shadow, and felt her heart swell with love. Okay, she said softly. Let's do it. Let's find our own place. Evan pulled her close, his hand gently resting on her still flat stomach. I can't wait to tell our baby this story someday. How their mother walked into that dining room and changed everything. Tasha laughed. I was terrified, you know. My knees were shaking the whole time. You could have fooled me, Evan said, his eyes filled with admiration. You were magnificent. As they stood in the small apartment, making plans for their future, neither could have guessed the lengths to which Sterling Lancaster would go to destroy their happiness. The battle had only just begun. In his mansion, Sterling sat alone in his study, a glass of scotch in his hand, staring at an old photograph he'd kept hidden for decades. It showed a much younger version of himself, with a beautiful woman with dark skin and curly hair, both of them smiling carefree and in love. Sophia, the woman he'd once loved enough to defy his own father until the pressure became too great, and he chose the Lancaster legacy over his heart. He'd spent decades burying that part of himself, convincing himself he'd made the right choice, and now his son was making the same mistake, falling for a woman who would never be accepted in their world. Except Evan wasn't making a mistake. He was showing the courage that Sterling himself had lacked all those years ago. With a sudden surge of rage, Sterling hurled his glass against the wall, watching it shatter into 1,000 pieces. No, he wouldn't allow it. He'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much to build the Lancaster empire. He wouldn't let his son throw it all away for some nurse and their half-black child. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. It's me, he said when the call was answered. I need you to dig deeper on Tasha Reynolds. Everyone has secrets. Find hers. As he hung up, Sterling glanced again at the photograph of himself and Sophia. For just a moment, regret washed over him. Then he opened his desk drawer, dropped the photo inside and slammed it shut. Some ghosts were better left buried, and some threats needed to be eliminated before they could destroy everything he'd built. 2 months passed quickly. Tasha's pregnancy was beginning to show, a small but definite bump that Evan loved to rest his hand on at night. They had found a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a diverse neighborhood, not far from the hospital where Tasha worked. It wasn't the luxury Evan was used to, but he seemed happier than Tasha had ever seen him. How did the interview go? Tasha asked as Evan returned home, loosening his tie. Really well, he said, kissing her before collapsing onto their couch. They seemed impressed with my ideas for expanding their tech division. Tasha sat beside him, tucking her feet under her. That's the 3rd interview this month. You're in high demand, Mr. Lancaster. Not as high as I'd be if my father wasn't blacklisting me with half the companies in Boston, Evan said with a wry smile. But it doesn't matter. The right opportunity will come along. Despite Sterling's attempts to sabotage his career, Evan had remained optimistic. He'd even started consulting work with a few smaller tech companies, using his knowledge and connections to help them grow. Any news about your mother? Tasha asked gently. Evan's expression softened. Actually, yes. I hired a private investigator, and he thinks he's found her. She's living in Montreal now, working as an art professor. Montreal? That's not far. Tasha squeezed his hand. Are you going to contact her? I already did. Evan's voice trembled slightly. I sent her an email this morning, explaining who I was, asking if she'd be willing to meet. "Oh, Evan," Tasha pulled him close. "That must have been so hard. The hardest email I've ever written," he admitted. "What do you say to the mother you thought was dead for 27 years? What if she doesn't want to see me?" "She will," Tasha assured him. "You read her letter. She's been waiting for this moment." Before Evan could respond, his phone chimed with an email notification. They both froze, looking at each other. "It could be anyone," Tasha said, but they both knew it wasn't. With trembling hands, Evan checked his phone. His eyes filled with tears as he read the screen. "It's her," he whispered. "She wants to meet. She says she's been waiting for this day for so long." Tasha held him as he cried. Tears of joy and grief mingled together. Another piece of the life Sterling had stolen from him was finally being restored. In his office at Lancaster Tech, Sterling reviewed the latest report from Rick Bridges. His investigation into Tasha Reynolds had turned up disappointingly little. No criminal record, no financial troubles, not even a parking ticket. The woman was frustratingly above reproach. "There has to be something," Sterling muttered, flipping through the pages. "Everyone has secrets." His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed a Montreal area code. His blood ran cold. "Hello, Sterling," said a voice he hadn't heard in decades but would recognize anywhere. "It's been a long time." "Sophia," he managed to say, his mouth suddenly dry. "How did you get this number?" "The same way our son found me," she replied. "He's a smart man, Sterling. He takes after his mother that way." Sterling's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "Nothing from you," Sophia said, her voice cool and controlled. "I'm calling as a courtesy. Evan has contacted me. We're meeting next week. I thought you should know." "Stay away from him," Sterling warned. Our agreement was that I would stay away until he turned 30 or until he found me himself," Sophia interrupted. "The second condition has been met. I've kept my side of the bargain for 27 years, Sterling. I won't be kept from my son any longer." "If you tell him everything, he already knows everything," Sophia said. "About us, about your father, about the choices you made. He found the documents I left for him." Sterling felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. "You had no right." "I had every right," Sophia cut in, her voice sharp. "He's my son too. And unlike you, I've spent every day of the last 27 years regretting that I let you separate us." There was a pause before she continued, her voice softer now. "He's in love, Sterling, with a woman who sounds remarkable. They're having a baby. He told you about her." Sterling couldn't hide his surprise. "Of course he did. He's proud of her, as he should be." Another pause. "Don't make the same mistake twice, Sterling. Don't let your prejudice and pride cost you your son and your grandchild." The line went dead. Sterling sat motionless, staring at the phone in his hand. Then, with a roar of rage, he swept everything off his desk, sending papers, his computer, and family photos crashing to the floor. His secretary rushed in, alarmed by the noise. "Mr. Lancaster, is everything all right?" "Get out!" he shouted, and she quickly retreated, closing the door behind her. Alone again, Sterling bent down and picked up one of the fallen photographs, a picture of Evan at his college graduation, standing proudly in his cap and gown, Sterling's hand on his shoulder. They were both smiling, but looking at it now, Sterling could see the tension in Evan's posture, the slightly forced nature of his smile. Had he really been such a terrible father? Had his determination to protect the Lancaster name, to give Evan every advantage, really driven his son away? No. This wasn't his fault. It was that woman, Tasha. She had turned Evan against him just like Sophia had all those years ago. History was repeating itself, and once again, Sterling was losing everything he cared about. But not this time. This time, he would fight back. This time, he would win. Tasha was finishing her shift at the hospital when she noticed a woman she didn't recognize watching her from the waiting area. The woman was elegantly dressed, probably in her early 60s, with light brown skin and silver streaks in her dark curly hair. As Tasha approached the nurse's station, the woman stood and walked toward her. "Tasha Reynolds?" she asked, her voice carrying a slight accent that Tasha couldn't quite place. "Yes," Tasha replied cautiously. "Can I help you?" The woman smiled, and something about that smile seemed familiar. "My name is Sophia Lancaster. I'm Evan's mother." Tasha's hand went to her mouth in surprise. "Sophia, but I thought Evan said you were meeting him tomorrow in Montreal." "I couldn't wait," Sophia admitted. "I flew in this morning. I wanted to meet the woman my son loves before our reunion." She glanced at Tasha's small baby bump. "And the mother of my grandchild." Tasha didn't know what to say. This woman, who had been absent from Evan's life for so long, who he had believed dead until recently, was standing before her, looking at her with kind, intelligent eyes, so much like Evan's. "Would you have coffee with me?" Sophia asked. "I know this is unexpected, but I've waited so long to be part of Evan's life again. I want to know the woman who helped bring him back to me." Something in Sophia's gentle manner put Tasha at ease. "My shift just ended. There's a cafe across the street." As they sat together, Sophia told Tasha about her life, how she'd met Sterling in college, fallen deeply in love with him despite his family's disapproval, and later reconnected with him years after graduation. "When I got pregnant with Evan, Sterling promised things would be different," she explained, stirring her coffee. "He said he was his own man now, that he didn't care what his father thought. But when Evan was born, when Sterling's father threatened to disinherit him if he publicly acknowledged me as his wife, he changed. He chose his inheritance over you," Tasha said softly. Sophia nodded. "Over us." As Evan grew and began to look more like me, Sterling became paranoid that people would realize I wasn't the white European wife he'd later told everyone about, the woman who supposedly died when Evan was 4. How could he do that? Erase you from Evan's life? "Money and power can accomplish almost anything," Sophia said sadly. "He gave me a choice. Leave quietly with a settlement that would support me comfortably, or fight a losing battle in courts he controlled, with judges he could influence. If I fought, he promised I would lose Evan completely." "So you left?" Tasha said, understanding in her eyes. "The greatest regret of my life," Sophia admitted. "But I made sure to leave a way back, a way for Evan to find me when he was ready, when he was beyond Sterling's control. And now he has," Tasha said with a smile. Sophia reached across the table, taking Tasha's hand. "Because of you. You gave him the strength to stand up to his father, to choose love over legacy." Tasha felt tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't do anything special. I just refused to let Sterling intimidate me." "That is special," Sophia insisted. "Sterling Lancaster has spent a lifetime intimidating people. Believe me, I know." As they talked, Tasha felt a growing connection to this elegant, resilient woman. By the time they parted, Tasha had invited Sophia to their apartment for dinner that evening, eager to surprise Evan with his mother's early arrival. Neither noticed the man in the dark sedan across the street, photographing their meeting. When Evan arrived home that evening, he was surprised to find Tasha cooking an elaborate meal. "What's the occasion?" he asked, sniffing the delicious aromas filling their small kitchen. Tasha smiled mysteriously. "We're having a guest for dinner." Before Evan could ask who, the doorbell rang. Tasha wiped her hands on a towel. "Can you get that? I need to check on the roast." Puzzled, Evan opened the door and froze. The woman standing there was older than in the photos he'd seen, with more silver in her hair, more lines around her eyes. But those eyes, his eyes, were exactly the same. "Mom?" he whispered, the word feeling strange on his tongue. Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Evan, my beautiful boy." They fell into each other's arms, 27 years of separation dissolving in an instant. Tasha watched from the kitchen doorway, her own eyes wet with tears. That evening was filled with stories, laughter, and healing. Sophia brought albums of photos she'd taken from a distance throughout Evan's life, at school events Sterling hadn't attended, at college games, even his graduation, where she'd sat in the back, her heart bursting with pride, but unable to approach her own son. "You were there?" Evan asked in wonder, looking at the photos. "All this time?" "As much as I could be," Sophia said. "I had private investigators give me reports, send me photos. I knew your favorite foods, your hobbies, your first girlfriend. But why didn't you contact me sooner?" There was no accusation in Evan's voice, only curiosity. Sophia explained about the agreement with Sterling, about her fear that trying to reconnect too soon would only hurt Evan more. "I had to wait until you were ready to break free from your father's control," she said, "until you were strong enough to withstand whatever he might do. And now I am," Evan said, taking Tasha's hand. "Because of Tasha." As the evening wound down, Sophia presented them with a gift, a small wooden cradle, beautifully carved. "This was yours when you were a baby," she told Evan. "I managed to take it with me when I left. I've been saving it, hoping someday." Evan ran his fingers over the smooth wood, emotion choking him. "It's perfect, thank you." Later, after Sophia had gone to her hotel with plans to return the next day, Evan and Tasha lay in bed, his hand resting on her growing belly. "Thank you," he whispered, "for bringing my mother back to me." Tasha smiled in the darkness. "I just arranged dinner. You found her yourself." "But I wouldn't have had the courage without you," Evan insisted. You showed me what real strength looks like when you walked into my father's dining room that night. Tasha turned to face him. Your mother is amazing, Evan. I can see so much of her in you, her kindness, her quiet strength. I want our child to know her, Evan said. To have the grandmother I never got to have. They will, Tasha promised, snuggling closer to him. We're building a new family, Evan, one based on love, not legacy. The next morning, Rick Bridges placed a folder on Sterling's desk. You were right, sir, there was more to find. Sterling opened the folder to see photos of Tasha and Sophia having coffee together, entering Tasha's apartment building, and later, Sophia embracing Evan at the door. She's already here, Sterling said flatly. She went to Tasha first. Yes, sir, and there's more. Bridges slid another document across the desk. I did some digging into Tasha's family background. Her grandmother raised her after her parents died, correct? Sterling nodded impatiently. What of it? The grandmother, Elaine Reynolds, worked as a housekeeper for a wealthy family in Boston before retiring. The Whitfields. Sterling stiffened. The Whitfields were old rivals of the Lancasters, a family his father had battled in business for decades. I spoke with some of the staff who knew her, Bridges continued. Apparently, before she worked for the Whitfields, Elaine Reynolds was briefly employed by your father. She was fired under unpleasant circumstances. Sterling leaned forward. What circumstances? The details are murky, but there were allegations that your father made inappropriate advances. When she refused him, he fired her and made sure she couldn't get work with any other family in their social circle. The Whitfields hired her as a sort of rebellion against your father. Sterling sat back, processing this information. Are you suggesting that Tasha's relationship with my son is some sort of revenge plot? That she deliberately targeted Evan because of something that happened between her grandmother and my father? Bridges shrugged. I'm just providing the information, sir. But it is quite a coincidence, don't you think? The granddaughter of a woman your father wronged, now carrying the Lancaster heir? Sterling's mind raced with possibilities. This could be exactly what he needed, a way to drive a wedge between Evan and Tasha. Does Tasha know about this connection? He asked. Unknown, sir, but her grandmother is still alive, living in a nursing home just outside the city. Sterling stood, a new energy in his movements. Arrange a meeting. I want to speak with Elaine Reynolds myself. The nursing home was clean but modest, nothing like the luxury facilities Sterling was accustomed to. Elaine Reynolds sat in a wheelchair by the window of her room, a crocheted blanket across her lap, despite the warm spring day. At 86, she was frail, but her eyes were sharp and alert. Mr. Lancaster, she said when the nurse introduced him. I never thought I'd see another Lancaster in my lifetime. Sterling put on his most charming smile. Mrs. Reynolds, thank you for agreeing to see me. Curiosity, she said bluntly. That's the only reason you're here instead of being told to go to hell. Sterling's smile faltered slightly. He dismissed the nurse with a nod and took a seat opposite Elaine. I understand you once worked for my father, he began. For a brief, unpleasant time, Elaine confirmed, before the Whitfields saved me from destitution. I've recently learned about the circumstances of your departure from our household, Sterling said carefully. If my father behaved inappropriately, your father was a predator, Elaine cut in, her voice strong despite her age. And when I wouldn't give him what he wanted, he made sure I couldn't find decent work anywhere in Boston society. If not for the Whitfields taking me in, my daughter and I would have been on the streets. Sterling nodded solemnly. I'm sorry for what you endured. My father was a complicated man. He was a monster in an expensive suit, Elaine corrected. Much like his son from what I hear. Sterling stiffened. I beg your pardon? Elaine's eyes narrowed. You think I don't know who you are? What you've done? Tasha tells me everything. Ah, Tasha, Sterling said, trying to regain control of the conversation. Your granddaughter. She's involved with my son, as I'm sure you know. Involved? Elaine scoffed. They're in love. They're having a baby. Your grandchild. Yes, well, that's actually why I'm here. Sterling leaned forward. I'm curious, did you ever tell Tasha about your history with my father? Elaine studied him for a long moment. Why do you want to know? Simple curiosity, Sterling said smoothly. Family history. Liar, Elaine said flatly. You're fishing for something, trying to find a way to break them up. Sterling dropped the pretense. Did you send your granddaughter after my son as some sort of revenge against my family? Elaine laughed, a surprisingly robust sound from such a frail-looking woman. You really are a piece of work. You think I orchestrated a romance between Tasha and your son from my nursing home bed? That she'd carry a child as part of some decades-old vendetta? Stranger things have happened, Sterling said stiffly. Get out, Elaine said, her voice suddenly hard. Get out before I call the nurse and have you thrown out. Sterling stood, straightening his suit jacket. Your granddaughter isn't good enough for my son, Mrs. Reynolds. She never will be. And I will do whatever it takes to protect the Lancaster legacy. Elaine's eyes flashed with anger. The Lancaster legacy? Let me tell you about that legacy, Sterling. Your father was a predator who used his power to abuse women. And you're a man who drove away the woman he loved because she wasn't white enough for your family name, who lied to his son about his own mother. Sterling felt the blood drain from his face. How do you... Tasha tells me everything, Elaine repeated, including about Sophia's visit yesterday. You Lancasters think you're untouchable, that your money puts you above everyone else. But you're about to learn a hard lesson from my granddaughter. She's stronger than you could ever imagine. As Sterling turned to leave, Elaine called after him. One more thing, Mr. Lancaster. Yes, I did tell Tasha about my history with your father. I told her when she was 16, so she'd understand that rich men like you see women like us as disposable. That lesson kept her strong, kept her from letting anyone treat her as less than she is. Sterling left the nursing home, his mind churning. He hadn't gotten what he'd hoped for, proof of some conspiracy, but he had something almost as useful. Tasha knew about the bad blood between their families. She'd known all along. Whether she had deliberately targeted Evan or not didn't matter now. The seed of doubt had been planted. All Sterling needed to do was make sure Evan found out that Tasha had kept this family connection secret from him. The next few days were some of the happiest of Evan's life. Having his mother back filled a void he hadn't fully recognized until now. Sophia, Tasha, and Evan spent every available moment together, making up for lost time, planning for the baby's arrival. Sophia had decided to extend her stay in Boston, renting a small apartment nearby so she could be close to them. She and Tasha had formed an immediate bond, often spending time together while Evan was at interviews or working on his consulting projects. She's amazing, Tasha told Evan as they prepared for bed one night. I see so much of you in her, or I guess so much of her in you. Evan smiled, his heart full. I still can't believe she's really here, that she's been watching over me all these years. She loves you so much, Evan, Tasha said, sitting on the edge of the bed. She gave up everything to protect you. Evan sat beside her, taking her hand. I've been thinking about that, about choices, about sacrifice. My father chose his legacy over love. My mother chose my welfare over her own happiness. And now it's your turn to choose, Tasha said softly. I already have, Evan said firmly. I choose you and our baby, every time, without hesitation. As they embraced, Evan's phone buzzed with a text message. He ignored it, but it buzzed again, and then a third time. You should check that, Tasha said. It might be important. Reluctantly, Evan reached for his phone. The texts were from a number he didn't recognize. Did your girlfriend tell you about her grandmother and your grandfather? Ask her. She's been keeping secrets. Attached was a photo of Sterling at what appeared to be a nursing home, sitting across from an elderly woman in a wheelchair. What is it? Tasha asked, seeing Evan's confused expression. He showed her the texts. Do you know what this is about? Is that your grandmother? Tasha took the phone, her face paling as she looked at the photo. Yes, that's my grandmother, Elaine. Why is your father visiting her? I don't know, Evan said, a knot forming in his stomach. What's this about my grandfather? Did they know each other? Tasha sat very still, her eyes fixed on the photo. Yes, she finally said. They knew each other. Your grandfather. He was not a good man, Evan. What do you mean? Tasha took a deep breath. My grandmother worked for your grandfather briefly when my mother was a child. He made advances toward her. When she refused him, he fired her and blacklisted her with other wealthy families. The Whitfields hired her to spite him. Evan stared at her, processing this information. You knew about this, about our families being connected. Yes, Tasha admitted. My grandmother told me the story when I was 16, to warn me about men with power and privilege. And you didn't think to mention this when we started dating, when you found out I was a Lancaster. Evan's voice had an edge to it now. At first I didn't make the connection, Tasha explained. The Lancaster she worked for was Howard Lancaster. I didn't realize that was your grandfather until much later. And after you realized? Tasha hesitated. I didn't see how it was relevant. It happened decades ago, long before either of us was born. Evan stood up, pacing the room. Not relevant? Tasha, this is exactly the kind of thing my father would use to claim you targeted me on purpose, that this whole relationship is some kind of revenge plot. That's ridiculous, Tasha exclaimed. "I didn't even know you were a Lancaster when we met. You introduced yourself as just Evan, remember? But you figured it out eventually," Evan pressed. "And you still didn't tell me about this connection." Tasha stood too, her eyes flashing with hurt and anger. "Are you seriously suggesting I got pregnant on purpose as part of some decades-old vendetta? That I'm using you to get back at your family?" "No, I just—" Evan ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "I wish you had told me. Finding out like this, from my father of all people." "I didn't tell you because it didn't matter," Tasha said firmly. "What happened between our grandparents has nothing to do with us, with our love." "But don't you see? This is exactly the kind of ammunition my father needs," Evan argued. "He'll use this to try to convince me that you've been playing me all along." "And is it working?" Tasha asked quietly. "Do you believe him? Do you doubt me now?" Evan stopped pacing, looking at the woman he loved, the mother of his child. Did he doubt her, even for a moment? "No," he said finally. "I don't doubt you. I know who you are, Tasha. I know your heart." The tension left Tasha's shoulders. "Then that's all that matters. Your father can spin whatever tales he wants. We know the truth." Evan pulled her into his arms. "I'm sorry. I let him get to me for a moment." "That's what he wants," Tasha said, resting her head against his chest, "to plant seeds of doubt to drive us apart." "It won't work," Evan promised. "Not ever again." But as they held each other, Evan couldn't help but wonder what other secrets might be lurking in their families' pasts, what other weapons his father might use against them. Sterling was in his study when his phone rang. It was Rick Bridges. "Sir, I've been monitoring Evan's phone as you requested. He received the texts about Tasha's grandmother." "And?" Sterling demanded. "What was his reaction?" "They had an argument," Bridges reported, "but it seems they've reconciled. The plan didn't work." Sterling gripped the phone tighter. "Keep watching them. Everyone has a breaking point." As he hung up, his gaze fell on the latest report from his investigator. Information about Tasha's medical history. Something caught his eye, a detail that seemed insignificant at first glance but might prove useful. A slow smile spread across Sterling's face. Perhaps he'd been approaching this all wrong. Why try to convince Evan that Tasha was using him when he could make Tasha believe that Evan would never fully accept her? He picked up his phone again, dialing a new number. It was time for a more direct approach. The following afternoon, Tasha was surprised to receive a call from Boston Memorial Hospital's administrative office. "Ms. Reynolds, we need you to come in to discuss an irregularity in your employment file," the administrative assistant explained. "It's rather urgent." "I'm off today," Tasha said, puzzled. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" "I'm afraid not. It won't take long, but it needs to be addressed immediately." Reluctantly, Tasha agreed to come in. She was 30 minutes pregnant now, and while the morning sickness had subsided, she still tired easily. She'd been looking forward to a quiet day at home. When she arrived at the hospital, she was directed not to the HR office as expected, but to a private conference room. When the door opened, she froze. Sterling Lancaster sat at the table, impeccably dressed as always, a manila folder in front of him. "What is this?" Tasha demanded. "Why am I here?" "Please, sit down, Ms. Reynolds," Sterling said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I think it's time we had a proper conversation, just the two of us." "I have nothing to say to you." Tasha turned to leave. "Not even about your medical history." Sterling's voice stopped her. "About the condition you haven't disclosed to my son." Tasha's hand froze on the doorknob. Slowly she turned back to face him. "What are you talking about?" Sterling opened the folder, pretending to consult the papers inside. 3 years ago, you were hospitalized for complications related to an earlier miscarriage. The doctors found scarring that might make future pregnancies high risk." The color drained from Tasha's face. "How did you get my medical records? That's illegal." Sterling shrugged. "I merely ask questions. People tend to answer when I ask." "That information is private," Tasha said, her voice shaking with anger, "and it's between me and Evan." "But you haven't told him, have you?" Sterling pressed. "About the increased risks to you and the baby? About the possibility of complications?" Tasha's silence was answer enough. Sterling closed the folder, his expression softening in a way that seemed almost genuine. "I'm not here to threaten you, Tasha. Contrary to what you might think, I don't want to see you or my grandchild harmed." "Then why are you here? Why dig into my medical history?" "Because I want you to understand what you're getting into with my son," Sterling said. "The Lancaster legacy comes with responsibilities, pressures. Evan wasn't raised to handle crises, to deal with hardship." "You don't know your son at all," Tasha said. "Evan is stronger than you think." "Is he?" Sterling raised an eyebrow. strong enough to handle a high-risk pregnancy, potential complications with the baby, the possibility of losing you both. Tasha felt a chill run through her. Are you threatening me? No, Sterling said, standing. I'm warning you. Evan will fall apart if anything happens to you or that baby. He'll blame himself for defying me, for choosing a path that put you at risk. He moved closer, his voice softer now. I have the best doctors in the country at my disposal, the finest care available. All of it could be yours, could protect you and my grandchild, if you were part of the Lancaster family officially. What are you suggesting? Tasha asked, though she already knew. Come back to the fold, Sterling said simply. Convince Evan to return to Lancaster Tech, to his rightful place. Allow me to be part of my grandchild's life. In return, you'll have everything you need to ensure a safe pregnancy and delivery. Tasha stared at him, incredulous. You're trying to blackmail me with my own health concerns. I prefer to think of it as offering solutions, Sterling corrected. The path you and Evan are on is risky. Your health, his career prospects, your financial security, all uncertain. I'm offering certainty, safety. At the cost of our freedom, our self-respect. Tasha shot back. Sterling sighed, as if disappointed by her reaction. Think about it, Tasha. Not for me, not even for Evan, for your baby. What kind of mother puts pride above her child's welfare? The words hit Tasha like a physical blow. She placed a protective hand over her belly, fighting back tears of rage and fear. Get out of my way, she said through clenched teeth. Sterling stepped aside, allowing her to reach the door. The offer stands, Tasha, for now, but pregnancy complications can arise quickly, unexpectedly. When they do, remember that I could have prevented it. Tasha yanked the door open, then paused, turning back to face him one last time. You know what's sad, Mr. Lancaster. You could have had it all. A son who respects you, a daughter-in-law who could have learned to care for you, a grandchild who adores you. Instead, you'll die alone, surrounded by your money and your precious legacy, but not a single person who truly loves you. She walked out, her head high despite the tears streaming down her face. Sterling watched her go, her words echoing uncomfortably in his mind. Alone in the conference room, he took out his phone and made a call. It's me, he said when the line connected. I want you to arrange a consultation with Dr. Miller. Tell him it's about high-risk pregnancy management. Perhaps Tasha was right. Perhaps he had approached this all wrong from the beginning. Tasha sat in her car outside the hospital, trying to regain her composure before driving home. Her hands trembled as she rested them on her growing belly. Sterling's words echoed in her mind, stoking fears she'd been trying to ignore. She hadn't told Evan about her previous miscarriage, or the doctor's warnings about potential complications. It had happened before she met him, and when she'd discovered she was pregnant, she'd been so caught up in their joy that it hadn't seemed necessary to bring up past sorrows. But Sterling was right about one thing. Her pregnancy was higher risk than most. Her doctor had already scheduled more frequent checkups and additional tests. What if something did go wrong? What if Evan blamed himself for choosing a path that meant less financial security, less access to top medical care? No, she shook her head firmly. She wouldn't let Sterling manipulate her like this. She and Evan would face whatever came together, as they had everything else. She started the car and headed home, determined to tell Evan everything. No more secrets between them, not even ones meant to protect. When Tasha arrived at their apartment, she found Evan and Sophia sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out before them. There you are, Evan said, looking up with a smile that faded when he saw her face. What's wrong? You look upset. Tasha took a deep breath. We need to talk, all of us. Over the next hour, Tasha told them everything, about her meeting with Sterling, his attempts to manipulate her with her medical history, his offer of help in exchange for their compliance. He has no right, Evan said, his face flushed with anger. Accessing your medical records, trying to use your health against you, it's beyond cruel. I'm not surprised, Sophia said sadly. Sterling has always believed that money and power can solve any problem, control any situation. I should have told you about my medical history, Tasha said to Evan. The miscarriage happened 3 years ago. There was some scarring that could complicate this pregnancy. Evan took her hands. Why didn't you tell me? At first, because it was painful to talk about, Tasha admitted. Then when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't want to overshadow our happiness with worry. My doctor knows everything. She's monitoring me closely. We'll get through this together, Evan assured her. Whatever happens, whatever care you need, we'll find a way. Sophia had been quiet, listening carefully. Now she spoke up. Actually, I may have a solution. She reached for her purse and pulled out a checkbook. I received a substantial settlement from Sterling when I left. I've invested it well over the years. I'd like to help ensure you have the best medical care available. Mom, we can't ask you to— You're not asking, I'm offering, Sophia interrupted gently. This is my grandchild too. Let me do this. Tasha felt tears welling in her eyes. Thank you, Sophia, but it's not just about the money. Sterling made it sound like something is bound to go wrong, like I'm destined for complications. That's his manipulation talking, Sophia said firmly. Yes, there are risks, but many women with similar histories have perfectly healthy pregnancies and babies. We'll make sure you have the best care, but don't let Sterling's words plant fear in your heart. Evan stood suddenly, a determined look on his face. This has to stop. His games, his manipulation, his attempts to control our lives. What are you going to do? Tasha asked. I'm going to talk to him. One last time. Evan, no, Sophia protested. You know how he is. He'll only try to manipulate you too. I'm not the same man I was a few months ago, Evan said. I won't let him get to me again. Tasha stood, taking his hands. Are you sure about this? Evan nodded. I need to make it clear that his behavior is unacceptable, that if he wants any relationship with us, with his grandchild, he needs to change. I'm coming with you, Tasha said firmly. No, Evan shook his head. In your condition, after what he just put you through, I need to do this alone. Tasha wanted to argue but saw the determination in his eyes. This was something Evan needed to do by himself. Okay, she agreed reluctantly, but promise me you won't let him get into your head. I promise, Evan said, kissing her gently. Sterling was surprised when his secretary announced that Evan was waiting to see him. He'd expected Tasha to keep their meeting a secret, at least temporarily. Send him in, Sterling ordered, quickly arranging his face into a neutral expression. Evan entered, looking more confident and composed than Sterling had ever seen him. There was a new strength in his posture, a clarity in his eyes that was almost unnerving. Evan, Sterling greeted him, this is unexpected. Have you reconsidered my offer to return to the company? No, Evan said simply, taking a seat without being invited. I'm here about Tasha, about your meeting with her today. Sterling's expression didn't change. I see she told you. Of course she did. We don't keep secrets from each other, Dad. Not anymore. Evan leaned forward. What you did, accessing her medical records, using her health concerns to try to manipulate her, it stops now. I merely pointed out the realities of your situation, Sterling said smoothly. A high-risk pregnancy requires resources, the best medical care, resources I can provide. Mom is helping us with the medical expenses, Evan countered. Tasha will have excellent care. Sterling couldn't hide his surprise. Sophia, she's involved in this now? She's going to be our child's grandmother, Evan said. Of course she's involved. Sterling felt a flash of something unexpected. Jealousy, perhaps, at the thought of Sophia having a relationship with his grandchild when he was shut out. I see, he said, his voice tighter than before. And you think her help is enough? That you can provide the kind of life a Lancaster should have without me, without the company? This isn't about being a Lancaster, Evan said. It's about being a family, something you seem to have forgotten how to be. Sterling stood abruptly, moving to the window. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family. For you. You're right, Evan agreed, his voice softer now. I don't know, because you never talk about it. You never talk about Mom, about why you really sent her away. Sterling didn't respond, his back still turned. Was it worth it, Dad? Evan pressed. Giving up the woman you loved to please your father? Losing those years with her? With me? Sterling's shoulders tensed. I did what I had to do to secure your future. No, Evan said. You did what was easiest. What protected your inheritance, your position? You chose your father's approval over your own happiness, over our family. Sterling turned slowly, his face uncharacteristically vulnerable. You don't understand what it was like. My father was— he was a difficult man to please. I understand better than you think, Evan said. I spent my whole life trying to please you, doing everything you wanted, swallowing my own dreams and desires just to earn your approval. The words hit Sterling like a physical blow. Was that true? Had he done to Evan exactly what his own father had done to him? I didn't realize, he began, then stopped. That's the problem, Dad. You never realized how your actions affected others. Mom, me, and now Tasha. Sterling moved back to his desk, suddenly looking older, more tired. What do you want from me, Evan? Why are you really here? I want you to stop trying to control us, Evan said simply. I want you to accept Tasha as the woman I love, as the mother of your grandchild, and I want you to decide what kind of grandfather you're going to be, One who is part of our child's life, or one who is merely a distant, wealthy relative we tell stories about? Sterling was silent for a long moment. And if I can't accept her, if I believe she's not right for you for the Lancaster name, then that's your loss, Evan said, standing. Because she is right for me. She makes me stronger, happier, more myself than I've ever been. As Evan turned to leave, Sterling called out, "She knows about Howard, you know, about what happened with her grandmother. She kept that from you." Evan paused at the door. "She told me everything, Dad, and unlike you, I understand why she hesitated to share it. She didn't want the past to poison our future." He looked back at his father. "Maybe that's a lesson you should learn." After Evan left, Sterling sat motionless behind his desk. His son's words echoed in his mind, alongside Tasha's parting comment about dying alone. Was that truly his fate? To end his days surrounded by wealth and accomplishments, but devoid of genuine connection. For the first time in decades, Sterling Lancaster found himself questioning the choices that had defined his life. The next few months passed quickly. Tasha's pregnancy progressed with careful monitoring from her medical team, supplemented by specialists Sophia helped them afford. Despite Sterling's dire warnings, there had been no serious complications, though Tasha was advised to begin her maternity leave earlier than planned. Evan had found a position with a promising tech startup, taking a significant pay cut from his Lancaster tech salary, but finding more fulfillment in work that valued his ideas and vision. He'd also continued his consulting work on the side, slowly building a reputation independent of the Lancaster name. They'd moved to a slightly larger apartment with a proper nursery, decorated with furniture Sophia had lovingly selected and artwork Tasha's grandmother had made. Elaine Reynolds had been delighted to learn about Tasha's pregnancy and had immediately begun crocheting blankets and booties for her great-grandchild. When Tasha told her about Sterling's visit and his attempts to use their family history against them, Elaine had merely laughed. "That man is still fighting battles that ended decades ago," she'd said. "But you and Evan are writing a new story. Don't let the past cast shadows on your future." There had been no further contact from Sterling. Evan had made peace with that, focusing instead on the family they were building: Tasha, the baby, Sophia, and Elaine. It wasn't the legacy he'd been raised to expect, but it was richer, warmer, more genuine than anything he'd known growing up in the Lancaster mansion. At 7 months pregnant, Tasha glowed with health despite her occasional discomfort. Her body had changed dramatically, her small bump now a prominent belly that Evan loved to rest his hands on, feeling their baby kick and shift. "Have you decided on a name yet?" Sophia asked one evening as they sat in the living room after dinner. Evan and Tasha exchanged a look. "We have," Evan said. "If it's a girl, we're thinking Elaine Sophia Reynolds Lancaster." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "And if it's a boy?" "David James Reynolds Lancaster," Tasha said. "David after my father, and James after my maternal grandfather," Sophia finished, smiling through her tears. "The man my mother always said was the love of her life. We want our child to carry the names of people who understood what family really means," Evan explained. "Not just bloodlines or legacies, but love and sacrifice and acceptance." Sophia reached out, squeezing both their hands. "I'm so proud of you both, so grateful to be part of this family." As they talked about the upcoming baby shower, none of them noticed the black sedan parked across the street or the man inside watching their building with a thoughtful expression. The baby shower was a small but joyful affair, held in the community room of their apartment building. Tasha's colleagues from the hospital, friends from the neighborhood, Sophia and Elaine, who had insisted on coming despite her frail health, gathered to celebrate the new life that would soon join them. The room was decorated with yellow and green streamers and balloons, as they'd decided not to learn the baby's sex beforehand. Gifts piled up on a table, practical items like diapers and onesies, handmade blankets and toys, books and baby gear. "You're glowing," Tasha's friend Maria from the hospital said, handing her a gift bag. "Pregnancy suits you." Tasha smiled, resting a hand on her rounded belly. "I never expected to feel this good at 7 months. The specialists Sophia found have been amazing." As the party progressed, Evan seemed increasingly nervous, checking his watch frequently. "Everything okay?" Tasha asked when he returned from his 3rd trip to their apartment. "Perfect," he assured her. "Just making sure everything is ready for my surprise." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "What surprise?" "If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise," Evan teased, kissing her forehead. After the games and food, when it was time for gifts, Evan disappeared briefly and returned carrying a small, beautifully wrapped package. "This one's special," he said, placing it in Tasha's hands. "Open it first." Curious, Tasha carefully unwrapped the gift. Inside was a tiny baby onesie, soft white cotton embroidered with the name they'd chosen, Elaine Sophia or David James, depending on who arrived. "Evan, it's beautiful," Tasha whispered, running her fingers over the delicate stitching. "There's more," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Beneath the onesie was a framed photograph, a vibrant color image of a young Sophia holding baby Evan, both of them smiling at the camera, the love between them palpable even across the decades. "My mother found it in her things," Evan explained, one of the few pictures she managed to keep when she left. Tasha felt tears streaming down her face as she looked at the image of mother and son, seeing the echoes of Evan's face in his infant self, the joy in Sophia's eyes as she held her child. "Our baby will know their history," Evan said softly. "All of it, the good and the bad, the love and the loss. They'll know they come from people who fought for love, who chose each other despite everything." The room had fallen silent, everyone touched by the moment. Even Elaine was wiping tears from her wrinkled cheeks. The tender moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. One of Tasha's friends opened it, then turned with a surprised expression. "There's a delivery for Tasha and Evan," she announced. A delivery person entered carrying an enormous gift basket wrapped in cellophane and tied with a silver bow. There was no card visible. "Who sent this?" Tasha asked as the basket was placed before her. The delivery person shrugged. "The order just said it was for the baby shower. Everything's been paid for." Curious, Tasha began unwrapping the elaborate gift. Inside were the finest baby items money could buy. Organic cotton clothing, handcrafted toys, a sterling silver rattle, and a small velvet box. Tasha opened the box carefully. Inside was a delicate gold locket on a thin chain. When she clicked it open, she gasped. On one side was a tiny photograph of Evan as a baby, on the other, a picture of herself as an infant. "How is this possible?" she whispered, showing Evan. "Who would have these pictures? Who would put them together like this?" Evan took the locket, examining it with a frown. "This picture of me, only my father would have it. And the one of you. It's the same photo my grandmother kept on her nightstand," Tasha said, looking over at Elaine, who nodded in confirmation. At the bottom of the basket was a small cream-colored envelope. With trembling fingers, Tasha opened it and read the brief note inside. "For my grandchild. The past cannot be changed, but perhaps the future can be written differently. SL." Evan and Tasha exchanged a look of shock. Sterling Lancaster sending a gift to their baby shower, acknowledging their child as his grandchild. "Well," Sophia said, breaking the stunned silence. "It seems Sterling might be capable of surprise after all." The party continued, but Tasha couldn't stop thinking about the gift, about what it might mean. Was Sterling extending an olive branch, or was this another manipulation, another attempt to insert himself into their lives? Later that evening, after the guests had gone and Elaine had been taken back to her nursing home, Tasha sat on the couch with her feet in Evan's lap, enjoying a foot massage from her attentive partner. "What do you think it means?" she asked, still turning the locket over in her hands. "Your father's gift." Evan's hands continued their gentle work on her swollen feet. "I'm not sure. Maybe he's genuinely trying to make amends. Or maybe he's just ensuring he has a connection to his grandchild, regardless of how we feel. Should we reach out to him?" Tasha asked. "Thank him for the gift?" Evan was quiet for a moment. "Let's wait," he finally said. "See if this is just a gesture or if he's truly trying to change. My father has always been good at grand gestures when they serve his purpose." Tasha nodded, understanding Evan's caution. Sterling had hurt them both too deeply for trust to be easily restored. The peaceful moment was interrupted by Tasha's phone ringing. She didn't recognize the number but answered anyway. "Hello? Is this Tasha Reynolds?" asked a woman's voice, unfamiliar but with a hint of an accent similar to Sophia's. "Yes, this is Tasha. Who's calling?" There was a pause, then, "My name is Amara Okafor. I believe we have something in common." Tasha frowned. "So I'm sorry, do I know you?" "No," the woman said, "but you know my father, Sterling Lancaster." Tasha sat up straight, her heart pounding. "Your father?" "Yes," Amara confirmed. "I'm Sterling's first daughter, the one he never acknowledged." Tasha's eyes met Evan's, who was watching her with concern. "I'm sorry, did you say you're Sterling Lancaster's daughter?" Evan's eyes widened in shock. "I am," Amara continued. "I've been watching from a distance for years. Never sure if I should come forward. But when I heard about you and Evan, about the baby, I realized it was time. Time for what? Tasha asked, her mouth dry. Time for the truth to come out. All of it. Amara's voice was steady, determined. Sterling Lancaster has more secrets than anyone knows, and I'm ready to talk. Tasha's hand went instinctively to her belly, to the child growing inside her, a child who, it seemed, had not just one half-sibling they didn't know about, but potentially more. Would you like to meet? Tasha asked, making a split-second decision. Tomorrow, perhaps? Yes, Amara said, sounding relieved. I'll text you a location. And Tasha, thank you for listening. I've been waiting a long time for someone who might understand. After the call ended, Tasha explained everything to Evan, watching as he processed this shocking revelation. Another child, he said numbly. My father has another child he never told me about. Apparently, Tasha said, taking his hand. The question is, what do we do with this information? Evan looked at her, his eyes troubled but resolute. We meet her, we hear what she has to say, and then we decide together what this means for our family. Tasha nodded, leaning against him, his arm coming around her protectively. Their child shifted inside her, a reminder of the new life that would soon join their complicated family tree. Whatever secrets Amara Okafor was ready to reveal, whatever new challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had everything else, together, their love a shield against the storms of the past. As they sat in their quiet apartment, the locket from Sterling on the coffee table before them, Tasha thought about how far they'd come since that moment when she'd walked into the Lancaster dining room, head high, refusing to be intimidated. She hadn't known then that her act of defiance would unravel decades of secrets, bringing truth to light after years of darkness. She hadn't known that by standing up for herself and her child, she would start a chain reaction that would reshape not just her life and Evan's, but the entire Lancaster legacy. Now, as they waited to meet the sister Evan never knew existed, Tasha realized that their story was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. The baby kicked, a strong, determined movement against her palm. Tasha smiled, placing Evan's hand over the spot. Feel that, she whispered. That's the future. Our future. And nothing, not your father, not the past, not even the secrets we don't know yet, can take that away from us. Evan nodded, his eyes filled with love and determination. Nothing, he agreed. Nothing at all. But as his phone chimed with a text, the location for tomorrow's meeting with Amara, they both knew that the road ahead might hold more challenges than they could possibly imagine. And somewhere across the city, in his mansion on the hill, Sterling Lancaster sat alone in his study, staring at a photograph of a young woman with his eyes and Sophia's smile, the daughter he'd denied, the family he'd abandoned. And he wondered if it was too late to right the wrongs of the past, to rebuild what his pride and fear had destroyed. Only time would tell. The end